the name of the restaurant?
So it's called Palace Prime. It's a very historic place in Santa Fe, restaurant. It used to be the Palace, but it's Palace Prime. So I invite you all to go. It's phenomenal. Not to brag, but it is phenomenal.
Thank you. We'll charge you a nickel for that.
Okay.
Okay, and Paul is going to be checking the chat, and I don't see all of our council members here yet. We've already got 4 things in chat. I'm hoping they're not important.
I see Elizabeth. Hi, Elizabeth. She says good evening from Elizabeth Martinez. And then Roy Turpin, Northeast Community Policing Council, co-chair.
Yep. Okay. So let's, we've started recording. Everybody's received notice of that. I'm going to declare this public forum open then for February 14th. And we'll start with item 1, which is the roll call of CPC panel members and establishment of quorum. Please note that there are 2 individuals who are supposed to be on the platform this evening, who I will not call. These are candidates who will be certified as members in just a minute or 2 when our new chair takes over. So here we go. Andre Lynn is not here yet. Graham, okay. My goodness. Idalia, I can see you and I've spoken with you. Jean Hamrick is playing hooky. She's here and smiling. And Paul Robert is here. And I'm Bob Carlton. So we have a quorum, which is necessary to have an actual meeting. So next item is approval of the agenda, which is posted on our website. If there are objections to the agenda, please so state. Otherwise, I will declare the unanimous approval of the agenda. Hearing no objection, the agenda is approved. Approval of the minutes of the January 22 Foothills CPC Forum. These 2 are posted on our website. Thank you, Martisa Billy, for taking care of those for us. If there are objections, please so state. Otherwise, I will declare unanimous approval. And hearing no objections, the minutes are unanimously approved. New and unfinished business. Election of new Foothills CPC leadership. Our council has met and discussed the question of leadership of our council for 2022. And we canvassed each other to see who felt both able and capable of leading our group. After discussion, we unanimously chose Idalia Chugatena as chair and Jean Hamrick as vice chair. Are there any objections to be raised concerning the making of these choices official? If there be objections, please state them now. If there be agreement that Idalia and Jean be chair and vice chair, please say aye. Aye. Paul?
Oh, I thought you said if there was objections. I have no objections. I'm in favor. Sorry, I misheard you. But yes, if it's about favor, then yes, aye.
That's great. And Josephine?
Aye. I mean, I approve.
Yes, very good.
It's been a long day.
Graham, a little bit late to the table, but do you approve of Jean and Idalia as vice chair and chair?
Yes. Yes. Yes.
Okay, thank you, sir. With that complete, I am more than pleased to pass the baton of leadership to Adalia Tina with my very best wishes for her tenure and for our council. Adalia, the baton is yours, ma'am.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chair, Mr. Former Chair now, Bob Carlton. So here's the baton. I want to thank him for making this. And he delivered it to me last week. So thank you, Bob. And this will carry history for our next chair. So I'll save it. I also want to thank Jean in her new role as Vice Chair for the Community Policing Council. Thank you, Jean. I've known Jean for a while. You know, she was one of my constituents when I was a former state representative. So I got to know her very well. She's a phenomenal woman, very, very smart. And I'm honored to work with you, Jean, in this capacity. Awesome.
Thank you. And right back at you, Adalia.
Thank you, Jean. Thank you, Madam Vice Chair. Thank you. Okay, we're gonna move forward to try to respect people's times. I know today's Valentine's, so happy Valentine's to everyone. Thank you for taking your evening to collaborate with the community tonight. I want to briefly, just for formality purposes, I want to do the election of our 2 new board members, just again for formality purposes and for minutes. We've, you know, we recruit all the time. We have 2 new board members, not board members, council members, Byron Padrell and David Anderson. We've scheduled interviews with them. The whole council met with them. We asked them a variety of questions. There was question and answer. And they both agreed to serve. So I'm very formal when I do the meetings. So I want, at this moment, I want to entertain a motion to officially vote them in. And I will start with Byron Padrell. I know he's here. And I want to take a motion from a council member, since I'm the new chair. And for formality purposes, I can't do a motion, but I'll entertain a motion. Thank you, Bob. So Bob, there's a motion on the table. Thank you. And Jean, a second, to officially vote Byron Padrell as a new council member for the Foothills Community Policing Council. Is there any discussion from any council members? Okay. We're gonna vote on it now. I'm gonna just check the chat real quick just to make sure everybody's okay. Excellent. Okay, all those in favor of voting Byron Padrell as a new CPC council member for the Foothills, signify by saying aye.
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 Aye. Any opposition?
Aye.
Okay, the ayes have it. Byron, welcome to officially to the Foothills Community Policing Council as our new councilman. Would you like to say a few words?
Well, it's good to be back and, get back into the community and start working on these projects again. I mean, I had a great time doing it and we got a lot accomplished and I want to continue that.
Thank you, Byron. Okay, with that, we're gonna move to our next council member, Mr. David Anderson. And at this time, I will entertain a motion to officially vote David Anderson as our next council member for the Foothills Community Policing Council.
I'd be happy to make that motion,
The
please.
motion. Thank you, Bob. There's a motion on the floor, Bob, by Bob to vote David Anderson as a new council member. May I have a second?
I second it.
Thank you, Josephine. Any discussion?
No.
Okay. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposition? Excellent. David, welcome to the Foothills Community Policing Council. Would you like to say a few words? I don't know if David, are you there? Okay. I'm sure this happened.
You know what? I'm a high-tech person and I can't make this work.
Okay, would you like to say a few words?
You know what? I was on the council many years ago, and I'm really excited to be back, and I look forward to working with the team, and I appreciate everyone's vote of confidence. Thank you.
Thank you, David. Awesome. Well, now that we have that, I do want to share very briefly that because we have new people in our council, we are looking into having a council retreat, hopefully by the end of February, early March. And this is a way just to get to know each other better, how kind of brainstorm how we can work together. And, you know, we'll be reaching out to Commander Collins also on ways that we can collaborate together, because at the end of the day, we're a team, right? We're a team and we want to move our community forward. We want to work together. So it's something that I think would be beneficial. And if any of the participants watching right now, if you have maybe something that's of interest that you can think about throughout the meeting, if you can email me or type it in the chat as to things that you want to see from the Community Policing Council, what you would like us to cover, because again, we want to work together with all of us. So take your time as we have this meeting this evening, and type in suggestions, comments that you would like to see. And with that, we're going to move to an APD update with Commander Collins. Commander, the floor is yours.
Thank you, ma'am. Actually, I was going to request if you wouldn't be opposed that I go after our speakers, because I do need to discuss paragraph 260 real quick with the board, and I'll need to share screen and everything. And actually, I just walked in. It took me an hour to get home from the Foothills sub today, so I'm a little bit of a mess.
Oh,
So,
no worries. Absolutely. We're
Lisa.
Flexible like that. Absolutely.
Good, good. So if you're ready, you can have my spot, and I'll just go after you all speak. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you. Okay, so we have two special guests tonight. And I will do a brief introduction, and then they'll take the floor. We have Lisa Huval, Deputy Director of the Homelessness and Housing for the City of Albuquerque. And then we also have a guest manager of a NGO working with hotel motel vouchers. So Ms. Huval, if you are prepared, the floor is yours.
Great, thank you so much. I appreciate it. Good evening, everybody. Thank you for the opportunity to be here this evening. Thank you, Bob, for inviting us to come and give this presentation. I know the genesis for this invitation was folks were interested in learning more about the motel voucher program that's funded through the City of Albuquerque. So we're prepared to talk about that tonight, but I also wanted to give an overview of our kind of as a city, our overall strategy for addressing homelessness, so that all of you had a little more context for how the motel vouchers fit into that bigger picture. As Idalia said, my name is Lisa Huval. I'm the Deputy Director within the Department of Family and Community Services. And then with me tonight is Heather Hoffman, who's the Executive Director of Barrett Foundation, which serves women and children who are experiencing homelessness. So I'm going to start and I'll talk for a few minutes and then turn it over to Heather to talk more about the motel voucher program as well as other programs that Barrett operates. And I do have a PowerPoint, so I'm going to go ahead and bring that up if that's okay with all of you. Actually, give me 1 minute. I'm just got to make one real quick change here. Get my PowerPoint ready to share with all of you. Give me 1 moment. Okay, now I'm ready. Hold on. Back to Zoom. Okay, here we go. All right, oops, and let me go up to the top slide. I got you guys starting in the middle here. Hold on 1 moment. Okay, here we go. So we're here to talk about city strategies for impacting homelessness, including but not limited to motel vouchers. So the first thing folks often want to know when doing these kind of presentations is like, what's the scope of homelessness in Albuquerque? The data that we have suggests that on any given night in our city, at least 1,500 people are in shelters or sleeping outside. We know that's an undercount because we especially for folks that are sleeping outside, we have a process, a system for trying to count folks that are sleeping outside, but we know we're missing people. And then our data suggests that over the course of a year, at least 5,000 households experience homelessness. Every other year, we do what's called a point in time count, where we count the number of folks who are homeless on one night, and that's that first bullet here. This next chart just gives you a sense of our point in time count data over the last, over the last 10 years or so. We really started using the same methodology in 2011. So I really think like this is most kind of valid to compare 2011 and beyond. And as you can see, like homelessness seemed to dip a little bit between 2011, 2013, and then has been increasing since then, but at least from our point in time count data, kind of slowly, not as maybe as big a jump as some folks would anticipate seeing. And again, this data comes with caveats. It is difficult to count folks that are unsheltered, and it also does not count people that are doubled up with family and friends or sleeping in motels. Or I should say, and I should clarify that since I'm here to talk about motels, it does not include folks that are paying for motels on their own. It does include folks that are in a program like a motel voucher program that's being paid for through an agency. There are lots of reasons that contribute to a family or individual's homelessness, but we know that people experience homelessness because they're unable to obtain and maintain safe and permanent housing. And each individual and family is complex, just like each of us. And there can be a different, for each family and individual, a different constellation of factors. For some folks, it's largely just economic. They don't make enough money to afford a decent apartment. For others, it's economic, but there's other things going on too, like untreated mental health or substance abuse, or chronic illness or physical disability that just undermines someone's ability to live independently. So with that in mind, as a city, we want to really expand and strengthen what I call our homeless crisis response system. We want to really strengthen that whole system of care that helps prevent homelessness, helps make sure folks are safe and can access services quickly when they do lose their housing, and then help folks quickly get back into permanent housing. So with that in mind, we have this 2-page graphic that I think is helpful overview of our approach to homelessness within the city of Albuquerque. And what I'm going to do for most of the remaining slides is kind of touch on some things we're doing in each of these. First, we know we need to prevent folks from becoming homeless. That's the best way to reduce homelessness in our community and across the country is to help people keep their housing. Coordinated entry is kind of a system for making sure when folks do become homeless that there's kind of a seamless and coordinated way for them to access the services they need, especially housing. Outreach is about going out into the streets and meeting people where they're at. This is particularly important strategy for folks that are not using shelters or are really disengaged from services. We can't wait for folks to come to us asking for help. Outreach is about going into the streets and building relationships and rapport and trust with people, and eventually with the goal of helping them connect to resources and services and get on a path towards more stable housing. Interim shelter or emergency shelter and interim housing is also a really important part of the system of care. The majority of folks that experience homelessness do want shelter. They are utilizing shelter. So we need to make sure that we're providing a safe and decent and dignified place for people to stay while they're looking for permanent housing, but that we're also providing supports and services to help folks exit that shelter situation into housing. We know housing is critical. The reason folks are experiencing homelessness is because they don't have a place to live. So we need to make sure that there's an adequate supply of housing in our community, especially rental housing that's affordable to people with low and moderate income. And finally, we recognize that homelessness has an impact on our neighborhoods, on our local neighborhoods, on our community. There's an impact when people don't have homes and they're living in public spaces. And we all see those impacts. Encampments are obviously the most visible effect of that. And so as a city, we also need strategies. While we're working on this broader system of care, we also need strategies that mitigate the impact of homelessness on the community. I just want to highlight some things we're doing within each of these areas. I'm going to go a little out of order because I wanted to talk about the motel vouchers at the end. We, as a city, for the first time ever, are investing in prevention of homelessness in a big way. This is really thanks to some money that some COVID relief dollars that have come to the city of Albuquerque through the U.S. Treasury Department. We've been awarded $31 million in emergency rental funds. We've partnered with the state of New Mexico, who also received a big pot to operate one statewide program. And to date, our partner with DFA has awarded $95 million in emergency rental assistance to New Mexico renters. So this is helping renters with utility as well as rent payments, both arrears as well as current and future rent and utilities a couple months into the future. So we're really excited about this program and that we've been able to help so many people avoid eviction and ultimately homelessness during the pandemic with these funds. We also take outreach really seriously. Again, we know that there are folks in our community that are, for a variety of reasons, trauma, mental health, substance abuse, are really disengaged from services. And we've got to go out and really build a relationship with those folks to help them get on a path towards something better. We've increased funding for street outreach services by over 50% just in the last fiscal year. I along with the county and UNM, lead a street outreach committee that's focused on better coordinating street outreach efforts. One of the outcomes of that committee has actually been the funding of a new position, which will be housed at First Nations, which is a local nonprofit that does excellent work serving people experiencing homelessness. That will really help even further advance our efforts to coordinate the outreach activities that we're doing. And then we also have our new community safety department. And within that new community safety department, there are 2 staff dedicated to doing outreach. So it's really the first time that the city's had 2 dedicated staff doing street outreach as well. And they're really working with folks in encampments. This is a good segue into this next slide. As I said, we know we need to, as a city, work to mitigate the impact of homelessness on our community, and encampments are probably the place where we see that impact. We've, over the last few months, really taken some steps to try to expand and strengthen our response. We now have a formal protocol that was issued last fall for addressing encampments on public property. So we have a clear process with clear timelines that we're following. We have 5 new staff positions within the city to address encampments on public property. So there's a team that now does this work. And we've really tried to strengthen our connection to street outreach providers as well. If we're really going to have an impact on encampments, yes, it's about giving notice and enforcing notice and making sure that folks aren't camped on public property, but ultimately we've also got to connect people to services as well. With all of this, we're also really investing in permanent housing. And one of the models that we're heavily investing in is what's called supportive housing. And supportive housing is basically help paying the rent, so help with housing, plus supportive services. And this is really a proven model for helping folks exit homelessness permanently. Our supportive housing programs have a 92% success rate in terms of helping folks stay housed. And you can see in this chart here, just the steady increase in city funding in this proven model for homelessness since FY18. And that's one of the pieces, like looking at my time here at the city, that I'm most proud of, is that we've really been able to invest in this proven model. And finally, there's shelter. This shelter is about making sure that folks have a safe and dignified place to be when they don't have a home, but it's also about connecting people to the supports and services that they need to be able to exit into something more stable and to exit into a permanent housing destination. At the city, we support shelter in a myriad of ways. One is we are very involved with the Westside Emergency Housing Center. This is the largest shelter in our city. In March of 2019, we made the decision to convert this facility from what had been a winter-only shelter to a year-round shelter. And then in March of 2020, at the beginning of COVID, we decided to take that a step further by keeping the WEC open 24/7. Up until that point, it was closed during the day. We serve approximately 300 people every night. The shelter can serve up to 450 people. We do get close to that number when it's cold. When there was a snowstorm 2 weeks ago, we got pretty close to the 450, but we average around 300 per night. Under COVID, we've really implemented a system of care out there to help protect people from COVID. So we've actually got staff on site that oversees a system for screening, testing, and making sure that folks have a safe place to self-isolate if needed. Then both within the shelter, and then we have a separate facility set up for that as well. We also, under COVID, began operating what we call our wellness motel for families. So this is a motel that's providing non-congregate shelter for families. Again, we started this during COVID. It serves an average of 85 families a night. And within those families, there's usually somewhere between 185 to 200 children. We've partnered with several local nonprofits to provide operations, case management, housing coordination, supportive services. And we've really tried to have a housing focus at our wellness motel. Like, this is not a place we want people to get stuck and just be for, a year. Like, our focus is on really helping folks exit to housing. And we've had some good outcomes. 78 households have exited to supportive housing over the last year and a half. And 44 families have also exited to housing that they were able to secure on their own with some support. Hopefully many of you have heard of the Gateway Center at Gibson Health Hub. So we are in the process of creating a new emergency shelter to expand the year-round shelter that is available in our community with robust supportive services. This will open in phases, and our first phase of the Gateway Shelter will open by the end of 2022. And this first phase will serve up to 50 women with children. And then I'm going to move into motel vouchers. Motel vouchers are also a way of providing safe emergency shelter for individuals and families who are experiencing homelessness. Motel vouchers are, unlike our wellness motel, where we as a city are actually leasing the whole motel and everybody stays in that one motel. Motel vouchers operate differently, where the individual or family receiving the motel voucher can select which hotel they'd like to use. So they're used at a variety of hotels throughout our city. We currently contract with nonprofit agencies to administer motel voucher programs. So we ourselves at the city, at Family and Community Services, do not directly oversee or administer motel vouchers. Typically, they are used as a very short-term form of emergency shelter, 7 to 14 days. And during that time, the person is, staff at the agency is working to connect the person to resources or services. Folks aren't most likely exiting homelessness within 14 days, but the idea is kind of a respite and it's a time to connect to other services. And those can include medical, behavioral health, dental services, getting assessed for housing so someone can start applying for the kind of housing options that are available to them. We do have some parameters around what motels can be used. Motels cannot be listed on what we call our ADAPT list. These are problematic properties that the city is working to remedy. So the agencies we contract with cannot use a motel voucher at a motel that's on the ADAPT list. Agencies must have policies and procedures, and in those policies and procedures, they have to stipulate that no more than 25% of the vouchers can be used at the same hotel. Looking at some data from the last fiscal year, so it's July 2020 through June 2021, there were 25 different hotels that were used throughout the city. Some of those only had 1 or 2 folks staying at them. Others had significantly more. So I do want to be clear that it's not the same amount of people staying at all 25 hotels. Looking at the top 10 hotels or motels, the ones that were the most utilized in that time period, 5 of those were located along East Central. And this is a little data about our motel voucher contracts. This is who we're currently contracting with and their dollar amount, as well as the number of people that to be served annually. And this is from their contract. So it's the number of people that are contracted to serve annually with this dollar amount. In the scheme of things, this is a relatively small strategy or funding strategy for us. We spend over $4 million for our West Side Emergency Housing Center, to give you an example. I don't have the exact dollar amount with me, but we spend over $1 million every year operating the Wellness Motel. So in the scheme of things, this is a relatively small program for us. It serves a fair amount of people because of the relatively short length of stay. We are also entering into 2 new contracts with these 2 organizations. And those contracts will probably be done by the end of this month. And the purpose of these contracts is specifically to serve families with children under 18. We are hearing a lot during the pandemic about an increasing number of unsheltered families. So families living in their cars or in other outside locations. And we just really felt a responsibility as a city to try to help address that. So we're excited to partner with Healthcare for the Homeless and Barrett to be able to serve more families and provide some safer shelter options. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Heather, and then we will be happy to stand for questions.
All right, well, thank you. So I actually do see a couple of questions in the chat. So is it group consensus that you would like for Lisa to go ahead and answer those now before I hop in? Or would you like me to go ahead and get started and then just answer them all at the end?
If we can, yeah, we can answer them now. Why not? I'm sure there'll be more later.
Okay, well, let me look at them. I'm just reading them now. How folks can apply for emergency rental assistance. Yes, you go to renthelpnm.org. There's an online application, so folks can complete the application online. They do have to provide some documentation, to prove that they're a renter in New Mexico, and if they're asking for back rent or future rent, just to show the rent that's owed, but it's a pretty straightforward application process. Oh, and it's actually here, I'm going to redo it. It's actually rent help. No, you're good. NM.
Oh, that's right. It was NM. Sorry. That's what I get for trying to be useful.
And then I do see the question about encampment. So yes, so let me talk a little bit about our encampment policy. We issued this policy last fall. So basically we have a team of 5 folks that address encampments on public property. And the process is we get reports about encampments through like 311, city councilors, the mayor's office. So this one team is managing all the reports of encampments. They're all kept on a consolidated list. Then when the reports come in, they go out and they post notice. Under our protocol, they have to give 72 hours notice. So they let folks know you can't camp here, you have 72 hours to leave. The only time that doesn't happen is if it's an immediate hazard situation. In that case, we do not post notice. The team makes a referral to our new community safety department for follow-up to do some outreach. Not everyone's interested in services, not everyone wants to engage, but we definitely want to give people that opportunity. So they make a referral to our community safety department, who goes out and does outreach. And then after the 72 hours has passed, the encampment team goes back. They make sure that folks have vacated. If not, they'll reiterate people need to leave. They will engage APD if needed, but most of the time that is not necessary. And then after the encampment is vacated, they'll work with the appropriate city department to clean it up. So that is our encampment protocol in a nutshell. I see the question, how many people does the West Side Shelter serve? So the West Side Shelter has 450 beds. So we can serve up to 450 people, even a little bit more. Like we really never turn people away. So if the weather's really bad and like 465 people show up that night, we're gonna figure out how to serve them there. But really it averages closer to about 400 or 300 people per night. And then yes, renthelpnm.org. Is there a limit for how long rent assistance can be used? For Rent Help New Mexico, yes, this federal funding, we can basically provide assistance for up to 12 months. And that includes back rent and future rent. So every household can receive up to 12 months of assistance. And I see there's a question about encampments on private property. Encampments on private property are the responsibility of the private property owner. So the process I just described really pertains to encampments on public property. For private property, APD can, and Commander Collins can speak to this more if he wishes, APD, if there's a no trespassing sign, APD can help enforce that there shouldn't be any camping there, but it is the private property's owner responsibility to take the lead on addressing it. And I see there's a question about where can community members get a motel voucher. You can contact those agencies that I listed to see if they have motel vouchers available. It's again, relatively small program, and they're usually, managing their funds so that they're available throughout the year. So they only serve a set number of people each month, but you can definitely call the agency and find out how to obtain a motel voucher if they're able to provide any.
On that point, Lisa, do you have the list of the organizations and the phone numbers that we can maybe share on our Facebook page, so that it's the name of the organization, the phone number, so that we can distribute to those that may need it?
I can get you that information, yes. But I do
Thank you.
want to just be careful. I do want to kind of just to set expectations, and Heather can talk. I mean, these are relatively small programs where, like I know it's obviously for us, like in normal life, like 300,000 is a lot of money, but for, for these programs, it's relatively small, and they are really stretching it out over a year. So be a little careful about kind of putting it out there. Like you call here, you can get a motel voucher, because, odds are that, that it's, they can be, I guess, difficult to obtain, only because there's a limited supply. And each agency kind of has developed their own process and criteria for managing the motel vouchers. And I see Colleen's question about motel vouchers given to the folks in encampments. And it's not like every time that we remove an encampment, we're handing a motel voucher to folks. It does not work like that. And do you want me to turn it over to Heather? I want to make sure she gets plenty of time too. Okay.
Yes, please. Thank you.
All right, so is that me?
Yes.
All right, well, thanks so much, Lisa. I've heard your presentation a couple times now, and I still always find it, so I find it so useful and helpful. So, okay, I'm going to jump in. I also am going to go through a couple of slides here. So I'll talk a little bit about Barrett as a whole, because I do think that not everyone always kind of knows the impact that Barrett has at this point in the community, but I will of course focus on our motel voucher program. And as Lisa noted, we were at the very beginning. I don't even think we've signed the contract yet. We were at the very beginning of a very new program involving motel vouchers that I will talk about as well. So give me just a moment here. And I am presuming my goal here is about 10 minutes or less for myself. So if anyone needs me to speak less than that, just let me know, jump in anytime. Don't hesitate to interrupt as you need. All right, so see if I can do it this way. So just a quick introduction to Barrett. Our mission statement is to end the experience of homelessness for women and children in our community by providing a variety of services, including shelter, housing, and supportive services. So a quick review of our shelter programs. So Barrett is most known in the community as Barrett House, as the shelter that we have in the community for women and children who are experiencing homelessness. Quick note to say that we are not a domestic violence shelter because we are such a open, well-known location. We're actually not a safe space for folks who are fleeing domestic violence, though of course it is worth noting that pretty much the great majority, let's say, of folks in our shelter, of course, at some time have experienced some kind of relationship with power and control or experienced domestic violence. But again, Barrett House is not a domestic violence shelter. We are for women and children experiencing homelessness. So that can mean single women or women with children. We do have the motel voucher program as noted. So previously with the city, we've had about $17,000 on an annual basis that we get for the city that we've been doing for years now. When folks, for whatever reason, can't come into our shelter, either we're full or they're just, their family is too large. Like if there's something going on that makes them not fit for our family, we would put them in this other motel voucher program. With the advent of COVID, we received additional funding, not just from the city, but also from some other sources, some federal sources, and have expanded our motel voucher program, which again, I'll get into in just a few minutes. We also contract with some local MCOs and hospitals in the community. We have a handful of respite beds. So folks who are needing kind of low-key assistance, but can still perform their daily activities of living, can stay in Barrett while they kind of get back under their on their feet after having had some kind of catastrophic medical event. So this is a quick table that just talks a little bit about our shelter versus our motel program. So as you'll see, they're pretty similar. Our motel and shelter programs work much the same. Because we do try to keep the motel program as low barrier as possible. But like Lisa noted, it's a cost that goes very quickly. Those dollars get spent very quickly, and we end up, as much as possible trying to help people be in this shelter. So for almost all of the motels that we work with, folks do have to have an ID. That's going to be one of the primary things that is worth noting to folks who are interested in motel voucher. They do have to have their ID on them or with them. Let's see if there's any, sorry, pushing too many buttons here. I don't think there's anything else there. So for our motel referral process, we've kept it pretty simple. So folks call that number, I actually put it in the chat. folks call that number, they indicate that they're looking for shelter. If we have, or for shelter in some way, if we have space in our shelter, we try to have them come into shelter. If we don't, or if they are specifically seeking motel, we walk through that process with them. We will have 2 full-time staff members who are going to be working on this motel program that we are embarking with the city. Right now, we just have 1 person secured who's been working with us for a month now and on this program, and then we are in the process of hiring another full-time person. So we do an in-person screening to meet with those folks. We work on goal setting on a one-on-one basis, and then from there on out, we work with weekly progress meetings with the folks in these motels. So here's a quick note to kind of explain this a little bit. This is the robust motel program. So originally we've been getting around $17,000 a year from the city. This new program that we embarked on, if you noticed on the table that Lisa shared, it's much larger. It's about $396,000. This program is for families with children who need a place to stay. They can stay in a motel for up to 90 days. The reason that there's so much funding attached to this program is we're working to get these folks into sustainable permanent housing after being in the motel. We didn't like the idea of putting money into having folks in the motel, but then knowing that they're probably going to be sliding right back into homelessness. So we have additional funds to help these folks, best case scenario, again, actually get into sustainable housing once we move through that motel stage of that particular program. So Barrett as a whole, as I mentioned, where most folks know us as the shelter, but we have multiple housing programs in the community, multiple permanent housing programs. I'm not going to read through all of this here, but just suffice it to say that we've got 5 programs in the community, 3 that we call rapid rehousing, 2 that we call permanent supportive housing. They're all permanent housing programs that are geared towards financially assisting folks to stay into housing, and also provides case management along the way. So I'm just gonna cruise through this screen really quickly here. This is contact information. If anyone is interested in asking follow-up questions, wants kind of a deeper dive on anything that Barrett does, please feel free to reach out to myself, or also our director of programs. I have her contact information here as well. So I will, my speed talking there, I will pause. I'm seeing folks come up on the questions come up on the chat here. So I'm going to look at the chat questions and go from there. Lisa, if I had to guess, I'm thinking most of these are going to be Lisa questions. Let's see. Oh, I just saw Kelly's comment. Thank you. I shouldn't have speed talked, huh? Okay, let's see. How do homeless on the street get transportation and shelters? Okay, this is an excellent question. I can speak to some of that, but Lisa's going to have a more involved question for answer for the West Side shelter. So for Barrett, it's a navigation. It's a case by case basis. We have recently come across some funding that is allowing us to do Lyft or Uber, so we can occasionally actually get folks to shelter in that way. Most of the times they're using the bus. Barrett House is actually pretty close to a bus stop. So if they don't have their own vehicles, they're typically able to use the bus, or again, if there's some kind of issue going on where Lyft or Uber would serve them best, we can get them in that way. If they're coming in through the respite program, then the hospital themselves usually provide their own transportation. But then West Side Shelter has a busing system and for getting to them, but I'll let Lisa speak to that.
Yeah, the answer is a really great question, and it does depend on the shelter. So like the West Side Emergency Housing Center, which is, like I said, our largest shelter, is located 20 miles from downtown. So we actually provide transportation out to that shelter. So folks have to get to one of the pickup points, which include Coronado Park, as well as God's Warehouse at Tennessee and Central. So folks will take public transportation to one of those points, and then they can get a ride out on one of the buses that we've contracted to provide that service. And other shelters throughout town kind of also depends. Some of them run shuttles, some of them can provide transportation. Let's see, I'm looking. I think there's a question here. Do a lot of motels not participate? Is that why East Central has the majority of vouchers? You know, it is up to the motels whether or not to participate. You know, and folks can, they can choose they do have the right to choose the motel that they want to stay at. And of course, the motel can choose whether or not they want to participate. And then nonprofits will also have motels that they'll work with if a participant doesn't have a specific choice. What would you add to that, Heather?
Thank you. So Barrett, because we've been getting these funds from the city for some time now, we have 2 primary motels that we've worked with for years now. And our motel coordinator, I mean, she and one of the motel owners literally text back and forth at this point, probably 5, 6, 7 times a day, and are just connecting constantly, you know, about kind of like what's going on, how are things going, that sort of thing. I say that just because I think that that's important to know, that we have a really tight relationship with the motels that we at Barrett work with. We've got that luxury of being a little bit smaller, so there's a little bit more of that intimate connection with the motels that we work with. But that's all that I would add, Lisa. I do see a question about Barrett. Does Barrett utilize volunteers to help provide services? So yes, always yes to volunteers. We absolutely love and value the volunteers that we get at Barrett. But specifically to providing services for the motels, really, so far, we really rely on those paid positions. Our coordinator that we have, who's like connecting with the motel owners and managers, she's gotten a lot of training and has a lot of you know, skill set at this point that she's been working on to make that program work. So for that particular program, we don't necessarily rely on volunteers at this point, but at the same time, Barrett House as a whole absolutely does rely on volunteers to move forward. Have any homeless that have, oh, did you want me to answer? Go ahead.
Oh, no, sorry. Lisa will be right back. But I see a hand up from Jean Hamrick. If it's Jean, we'll take your question.
Actually had 2 questions. It might be more for Lisa. Do you guys work with Suriname at all, and the New Mexico Housing Trust Fund?
Sorry, I had to step away for a second to charge my computer, but I heard your questions. Yes, so we're very familiar with Suriname and the great work that they do. Historically, they have not received city funding, but they are actually in our proposed plan that we will be submitting to HUD soon for funding, HUD funding to help support their second phase of their new transitional housing project on the west side. So I guess the answer is yes. And then, yes, also familiar with the New Mexico Housing Trust Fund. You know, and the city we have funding that we invest in the affordable housing projects. So like, I didn't talk about that work in my PowerPoint, but we help to fund developers to build more affordable housing. And so that what happens is developers use our funds to leverage other funds that are available out there, including the New Mexico Housing Trust Fund.
And then I will jump in. I see a question in the chat. I was going to jump in from Carrie Harmon. Have any homeless that have been in a hotel had cause to be asked to leave? Yes. Very fair question. And certainly, absolutely. And then if yes, are they allowed future vouchers? So I'm speaking for Barrett alone, just when I answer this. Absolutely. There are times where someone might be doing damage to the room, or someone might be bringing in guests, which I understand. You know, you've been on the street, you have a family out on the streets, and you finally, you know, you get into this safe, warm place. There's a lot of pressure from your friends to be able to bring your friends in. But the way our motel vouchers work, absolutely, you're not able to bring in anyone except for who is on that voucher. And whoever's on that voucher has to be part of your family. So if they're bringing in guests, like I said, or anything along those lines, they will ultimately end up being asked to be exited. And then, are they allowed future vouchers? That's an excellent question. I would have to ask our motel coordinator. I feel like, frankly, the answer to that is probably not, because we don't do motel vouchers twice within the same year, regardless of whether or not they exited successfully or not. So I feel like that's the best answer, is not within the same year. No, they wouldn't be able to get another voucher. And then what happens to them? So for Barrett, and they could always call and see about coming into our shelter, as long as we felt like whatever circumstances had them exit from the hotel, as long as they felt like they could still be safe in our shelter, then that would be an option. And I imagine, Lisa, it's fair to say much the same would happen there. They could probably still be eligible to like go into West Side or something along those lines.
Yeah. And I see there's some questions from Colleen as well about IDs and criminal background checks. So, I think the ID requirement that Heather mentioned is really a requirement that motels have. They want to see an ID to serve folks. So our nonprofits aren't requesting IDs necessarily for their purposes, but it is necessary to help someone secure an ID. And I do not believe that they are conducting criminal background checks on folks as part of this program. Barrett's not, and I don't believe any of the other nonprofits are doing that as well. And I saw too, Colleen, we missed a question from you earlier about, do you give motel vouchers? I think it was a follow-up to something I said. I just want to be clear, again, it's not a matter of policy to provide motel vouchers when we're asking folks to leave an encampment. If folks connect with a street outreach provider, and as part of providing street outreach to that person, like that's a resource that they connect them to, that would be the situation and when that would happen. And Idalia, I see you have your hand up. Did you want to jump in?
Sure, but I do see a question from Bob. Is there a form of coordination to determine whether applicants are or have been receiving benefits from another organization?
Good question.
So that's another good question. I love all these questions. So I can speak to that again a little bit and then have Lisa kind of jump in with a more full answer. So pretty much anyone providing homeless services in the community is on a system called HMIS, Homeless Management Information System. And it's a database where anyone who's receiving services, their name goes into that database. So for a couple different reasons, we try to check that and determine if that person is receiving services elsewhere. One of the biggest reasons is exactly like you're talking about, that coordination piece, right? Making sure that they are receiving coordination of care. Because if they have a case manager over here and they're getting a motel through us, that's great. We want their case manager to know about it. We want them to be able to have, tight connections. We want their case manager to be able to connect with us, ask any questions of us, see if we can be helpful in any way, if we've got any way that we can additionally support that client. So it's typically through that database that we are connecting to determine if that person has if they're receiving any other services elsewhere. But Lisa, I'm sure there's other
that's what I was thinking as well. I think that HMIS system is the primary way mechanism that we're able to see what other care folks are receiving at other agencies. It's not perfect though, for sure. Sorry.
My question, no, that's okay. Thank you. I'm learning so much. My question was, and this is from a member that couldn't join us today, but she's asking if is there a way we can donate to the organizations, like clothes, shoes, or is there a restriction now because of COVID?
So for us at Barrett, that comes and goes. So right now, yes, we were absolutely taking donations. When we were like at the peak of the Omicron, like we kind of shut things down for a minute again. But short answer is yes, absolutely. We're open to donations. I would definitely suggest calling first. That same number that I have in the chat is that's a good number to call to ask about donations. They'll direct you where you need to go. To kind of determine what particular needs we have. The trick about Barrett House is we have very little storage space. So we adore donations. We desperately do. Yes, we need clothes and shoes and that sort of thing. However, there's only a very small space that we have in our closet, but we often have people who come in with only the clothes on their back, and we love being able to say, come into this space, like choose whatever you need, whatever kind of clothing, socks, anything you need. But again, we have limited space in which to do it. So we have to be careful with our donations. So it's good to call first and make sure that in that day and moment we can take them. But yes, we thank you for even thinking to ask that question. I see another question in the chat. It says, is the city liable for damage to motels from city backed vouchers or violence done to others while homeless are staying in a motel? Is the city worried about these liability issues? I can speak to some of this, but Lisa, do you want to lead, since that's primarily a city question?
Yeah. I guess I again want to put this question in a little bit of context. The city funds a wide range of services that serve people experiencing homelessness. We fund emergency shelters, supportive housing programs, street outreach programs, in addition to the motel voucher. So there are folks throughout our city that are receiving services funded through the city and provided by nonprofit organizations. So there is, liability and risk for all of us in all the work that we do. The majority of folks experiencing homelessness are not criminals. Some do sometimes engage in criminal activity as part of living in a public space. Unfortunately, sometimes that happens. But I think we need to be careful, not to criminalize folks just for experiencing homelessness and living in a motel. So Heather, what would you add to that?
Yeah, so just, kind of our personal experience, I would say that over the years that we've been working with the city or receiving, various amounts of funding to do motels, this isn't really anything, I am very happy to say, that it's not come up. Now, damage to the space has happened before, to the motels. Absolutely, that has happened. It's usually not anything catastrophic. And Barrett, we try to be a good partner with the motels, and when we can, we do whatever we can to kind of make things right with the motel, because we want to be a good partner. Like, they're helping us in good faith. We want to kind of make things right so that we can keep moving forward as partners. And this statistic, I feel like most folks kind of hear this and are probably familiar with this, but I always really do like pointing out that these numbers change here and there, but truly those who are experiencing homelessness are actually around 10 times more likely to be victims of crime than to be the ones perpetrating crime. So, we're kind of thinking about protecting the folks who are experiencing homelessness, getting them off of the streets and into a space where they have a door that locks, particularly our folks who have families, who have kids, because the new program we have is specifically, of course, with families with children. So we're wanting them in that safe space behind a closed locked door so they can be as safe as possible themselves. And then I see another Barrett question, and I'll move on to that. If that anything else, Lisa, or you good if I move on? Okay. So who are Barrett's primary funders? Okay. This is fun. I feel like it's a pop quiz for me to do my executive director chops and make sure I'm remembering this off the top of my head. So these are great. So our primary funders for like our outside programs besides the shelter they're going to tend to be the city. We've got several housing programs through the city. Now, a lot of those programs do kind of trace up to HUD or to federal funding if you were to kind of follow the path all the way up. We do have one program that we just contract directly with HUD for. We have another program that also traces back up to HUD, but there's a subcontractor in the middle who is Catholic Charities. These are all for these grants where we call them dollar for dollar grants. I mean, it's just a phrase I made up, where we are spending the money and then we're being reimbursed for it. And those are the largest grants that we have with city and federal grants. And then as far as Barrett Shelter, we just have a lot of donors as opposed to like funders in terms of grants and things. There's a lot of just amazing people in the community that who provide donations, who help that shelter continue to exist and be successful. Wow, are we out of questions?
Oh, no, I think Byron Pudrell had one.
Oh,
Byron,
good.
his hand was raised.
Oh, there it is. Okay, I see that. Hi, Byron.
I learned a new toy here tonight. You know, as I listen, I mean, this opens up a world of questions. And number one, as I look at some of the questions that come through in the general area of the Southeast Heights, there is a mass of hotels that do take the vouchers. And we want to say, but we believe more so than most parts of the city. And not to, you know, nobody ever wants to really feel like they're criminalizing the homeless. But in relation to the safety factor that comes into play, let me see if I can get this right. The hotels, the money that they get from the vouchers is guaranteed. Shouldn't a requirement of maybe some of the hotels that do take the vouchers that they provide an amount of security based upon the fact that you're saying that a lot of the folks that are unsheltered and homeless are victims. And I think that, you know, maybe some of the issues that happen would probably be less if there was maybe a requirement for security for these for the hotels that do take the vouchers. And then I'll let you answer that, and then I'll put my hand up after everybody else for the next one.
So Lisa, I'll have you jump in because I feel like I think that's largely a city question. So I'll have you jump in and then if there's anything I can fill in, I'll be happy to.
Okay. So Byron, just to make sure I understand, you're suggesting that as a condition of receiving the motel vouchers funding, the motels provide security, or like if any motel that's kind of being paid through this voucher program provide on-site security.
Well, you know, any business, you know, that's out there should, you know, of course, we rely on them to provide a reasonable amount of security for the guests that stay, because if a percentage of the guests that are staying are unsheltered, and then of course you have people coming in from out of town and what have you that are staying there should be provided some reasonable amount of security, because again, not to criminalize all the homeless, but there's always that little one or two, that small percentage that are in there. And those are the ones that show up on the news when we see that, somebody's been killed in one of the hotels, or there's been a big drug bust or what have you, or they've been doing something. And so having that reasonable amount of security in these, and around these hotels, and being that we have such a concentrated amount of those up in this area. I mean, I believe more so than anywhere else that I think that something like that I would look into it. And I think it was something that would be warranted. And I think if the people that live around in these areas would understand that, I think it would take some of that pressure off of everybody to say, you know what, we feel better about what we're doing because we see that they're doing something to help as well.
Yeah. Well, we can certainly think about that. I mean, I think the challenge is, like this motel voucher program is relatively small program. I mean, it's, and I do agree, like some of the motels along East Central are being used more than motels in other parts of town. But the motel voucher program is really not isn't paying for the majority of folks staying at that motel in any given week or any given month. It's too small. We're not spending enough money. Again, less than $300,000 a year total, and that's split out across 12 months. So I don't know if the volume of folks that are being sheltered through the motel voucher program would necessarily justify needing a security just because of those folks. I also, I do recognize there is a lot of criminal activity or other, questionable activity taking place at some of these motels. But it's not, I really want to stress too, it's not just the folks being sheltered through the motel voucher program. that are contributing. I think, there's larger issues going on here too about the needs of those folks who are utilizing those motels. So there's I just want to honor, there's a bigger question or concern here about the folks who are utilizing those motels and like what's going on in their lives.
And we've gotten really lucky on our end. Now, of course, we're a small piece of, what the city does, and the relationships that we have with the motels are excellent. And I guarantee you, if they felt like, our clients were creating a spike in safety, they would let us know. Because like I said, they are literally kind of just texting back and forth, daily with our staff to just check in, make sure everything's okay, ask questions, because we have a really amazing relationship with them. And so I at least on our end, on our small little part, do feel pretty confident that, luckily so far the clients that we're bringing in aren't creating kind of any like safety spike or concern or anything like that. But just as Lisa noted, it's always worth kind of keeping those, keeping different solutions in mind.
Okay.
So I see a question in the chat and I see a hand up. So I'll tell you what, Paul, I feel like hasn't asked a question yet. So I'm going to start with Paul and then I'll go to the chat. Hey, Paul.
Hey. So we've been talking about hotel vouchers, but let's go back to encampments. I know there's a lot of money in housing. There's some money in motel vouchers, but the encampment piece, I think that's what a lot of, right? We're driving around the city all over the place and we're seeing a lot of encampments and it feels like it's growing. I don't have the data to show that, but it feels like it's a lot. Especially, of course, we're in the southeast part of the city, and so I'm gonna focus on that because that's what the group is today. And I go through Central and Tramway a lot, and it feels the same or worse, but never better. And I don't know, did you feel like the funding's enough for that, or is it just individuals that, hey, we go out there, we see them every day, but if they don't want to leave, we can't force them? I'm just kind of curious about that piece, because that's what I see most of the time.
Yeah, I think we all see an increasing number of encampments in our community. So like it feels like that's increasing here, just like it is really in communities all throughout the country. I mean, I think Albuquerque is not unique. There's no one magic bullet, easy answer to homelessness. I think as a city, this mayor and this, in our council, like we are trying to invest in a robust system of care to help folks, and also through our encampment policy, also have really clear protocols for how we enforce no camping on public property. I would say, I think in many ways, we do know what it takes to help most folks and their homelessness. They need help sort of navigating to housing. They need help paying for housing, at least for a period of time. And they need some services to stabilize and stay in housing. And that partly we see, part of our challenge is investing in all of that at the scale needed to really have an impact. And that's not something our local government is ever going to be able to like fully solve on its own. This is like sort of a investment and a commitment that would be needed across all levels of government. So this is all, to honor and validate what you're saying. Yes, we're seeing more. I think our city's doing a lot, but unfortunately it is a huge challenge and we don't necessarily have all the answers at the local level.
I have one question. As a career counselor for years, which is what I did before I had this job, I realized that basically there are three types of people who are looking for a job. The first type really is not satisfied with the situation they're in, and they'll do whatever it takes to get a job. The second type is, if a job falls out of the sky into my lap, I'll take it, And the third type is not really invested whatsoever in changing the situation he's in. He's in there to check a box for whatever reason, Has anybody ever done a study with homeless people similar to that, where we ask them why they're homeless? Because, I've talked to a few guys and a lot of them are just happy where they are.
So I can speak to that a little bit just from past experience. So before I was here at Barrett, I actually had a job very similar to Lisa's previous job. I worked for a continuum of care agency. That agency's job is to funnel like funding into the community to help prevent homelessness. And one of the things that HUD spends a lot of time doing is exactly what you just talked about, Kelly. It's kind of doing some research and figuring out why are folks homeless. And I think that question is kind of that age old, somewhat unanswerable question, but also, what's interesting is so many studies have gotten us back to that place of, and I use this in quotes, but I really do believe this, that housing ends homelessness, right? And that whatever caused it, if we're getting them into housing, a whole lot of these folks, even the folks who are just kind of like waiting for the job to, drop from the sky magically, because I understand, once they're in housing, they're out of crisis mode, right? They're not like having to worry about their physical safety. How are they going to get a meal? How are they going to, get clean enough to go to a job interview? They've been pulled out of crisis mode. Once they have housing, then they're able to start focusing on kind of that next hierarchy of needs. So I think a lot of studies have been done on the why, but I also think that HUD is focusing on trying to kind of figure out the how, and just as much like the how to fix it, basically. And you're right, I've absolutely met a lot of folks who, I mean, they have some pretty sweet setups out in the woods, like folks that I've met with. I mean, they make it work, and that's where they prefer to be. I've had people tell me they literally own a house, somewhere in the community, and this is where they prefer to be. And absolutely, but I will say that that's, in my small experience, that's a pretty small percentage of folks. Mostly, once you provide them with that hope, that true hope that they actually could have a home for themselves and for their family, and they can see that as a tangible thing. I think a lot of folks hear a lot of promises and they get a lot of, oh, sure, just sign up for this program. But when they see it this close that it really can happen, they want it to stick. In my experience, the majority of folks I work with, they really do want to stay in housing as much as possible. I hope that answers your question a little bit, Kelly. I'm not sure. I'll let Lisa jump in there.
No, that was a good answer. I don't have anything to add.
I'm just bringing it up because we tend in government agencies, I think, to try to enforce a general set of morals on people who don't want those morals, and I think that wastes a lot of time for a lot of people. That's just my opinion, but like I said, I've sort of dealt with this issue for a number of years, and I kind of feel that way for that reason. But anyway, that's it.
That's fair, and that's well said. I mean, it's a good point. It's so easy to do that, to import our kind of moral construct onto others. I mean, even in the shelter, we have to be careful. You've got a power differential, you've got all kinds of things that play into that. So you're completely right.
Would it be okay if we take one last question, I think, from the chat, and then we can move forward to with Commander Collins? Would that be okay?
Yes.
Thank you.
Let's see. I think there's a question here about homeless veterans. And I do want to say, that the VA actually has a lot of resources available to serve veterans that are homeless. It's actually one place where I think the federal government has really invested a lot of funding and solutions programs to help homeless veterans. And there's actually been a significant decrease in the number of veterans experiencing homelessness as a result across the country, including in Albuquerque, because of that investment. So I think many of our partners in the community have worked with the VA, so they understand VA resources that are available, and they will refer folks into the VA. And then the VA also comes out into the community and does outreach as well to assess veterans and connect them to their services. I don't know, Heather, would you add anything to that?
I think that the only thing I would add is, so I worked in Chattanooga with veterans for years, so that's definitely a soft spot in my heart. And The only thing I would add is certainly there are sometimes, kind of like Kelly was saying with folks experiencing homelessness, there are folks who don't always want to work with the VA, right? Veterans who aren't, comfortable doing that. But even then, there still tend to be a lot of resources, even if they don't want to work directly with the VA. There's a lot of kind of like side resources that they are able to connect with. And just like Lisa said, the numbers for veterans experiencing homelessness in Albuquerque and nationally do continue to go down. So that's all.
Thank you, everyone, for the great questions this evening. It's a good discussion.
Thank you all so much. I mean, I've learned so much tonight. A lot of us also, I mean, just, getting private messages. Very, very interesting conversation. Thank you so much for your time. One request we had, is it possible that you can email us the PowerPoint presentations?
Definitely.
That would be awesome. And Heather, if it's okay with you too?
Absolutely.
Thank you so much. So with that, I want to move forward to the next item in the agenda. We're going to go back to Commander Collins if he is prepared.
I think I'm ready now. Thank you.
Awesome. Okay, Commander, the floor is yours.
All righty, thanks. So real quick, I just want to thank Bob for all the work that he's done on the board. It truly has been a joy to work with him. I mean, we met for coffee a couple of times. We've discussed things. So I just want to say thank you. And I look forward, Adalia, to working with you as the chair. I think it'll be a good year for that. So again, thank you both. I just wanted to tell everybody that Saturday we did start the new bid. So that's our 12-hour shifts. And so far it seems to be working out okay. I mean, we're still kind of settling in some of the positions that were opened up prior to the bid, getting those officers assigned to those, like some of the detective spots. I think there were some tactical positions that were opened. So we're kind of in a little bit of a flux on that, but once those positions get filled, then that should calm down a little bit. Our bid also requires us that we have positions open for patrolman second class. And largely in the past, the way I grew up in the department was it was straight seniority, and it still is. But if you were a patrolman second class, which means you're just fresh out of the academy and off OJT, you typically ended up with, graveyard, weekdays off. I mean, that's just how it was. But the problem is that you had squads full of guys like me 20 some odd years ago, and it was literally the blind leading the blind. I mean, there was not a whole lot of help, and we used to wear our sergeants out a lot because once you come out of the academy, it's a whole different ballgame out on the streets. And so now the idea is to put some of the younger, less senior officers with more senior officers, so we can have some of that assistance with, some of the questions. They take calls together. So we have a group of those officers, that class of officers that's coming off OJT in April, and they're already placed in squads right now. They're just still on OJT. So once they complete their on-the-job training, they'll be assigned to the area commands that they bid to. So that should help our numbers a little bit. But right now it seems to be working. But I'll keep you all posted on that. So we'll just have to see. So I'd like to kind of get into, and I apologize, I was supposed to do this last month, but as you all remember, I was in the middle of COVID, and I was sitting there just pretty much hating life during the last CPC meeting because that was not a lot of fun. So I didn't get a chance to do this, but this is revolving around paragraph 260, which is probably the smallest paragraph. It's not even a paragraph, it's a sentence. And basically what it says is that each area command will have its own individual outreach program, or words to that effect. So Kelly, I'm gonna try to share my screen. I think I can. I've never really, does that work?
Yes.
All right, cool.
Yes.
Can everybody see that okay?
Yes.
Okay. Yes. So basically, for paragraph 260, we're supposed to have each area command has its own outreach program. So the area commanders, we all got together. We met with Lieutenant Jennifer Garcia, who's overseeing this particular paragraph to report back to the monitoring team. And we came up with some different parts of how we think this might look. There was some level of surveys that were sent out kind of citywide. I don't know if any of you received any of them. I'm not even sure who did, but they were really kind of random to get us an idea of how people would like to see information. And obviously the biggest information dissemination vehicle we have right now is, in my opinion, is the CPC. I think it works really, really well because we all can get together either through Zoom or in person. We can talk about certain things that are going on within the area command, but that's just not solely what we're looking at, because we know that there's a lot more than how many people are on this. About 40 people are on this tonight. There's a lot more people living in the Foothills area command than 40. So getting the information out to them based on kind of their, could be their computer abilities, if they don't like to do things electronically, getting things out to schools, kids. So that's why we came up with some ideas on how this kind of should look. So if we move down a little bit to A1A, next door. I know there's a lot of folks on Nextdoor. I am terrible with Nextdoor. I'm just gonna admit it right now. I'm horrible with it. But on occasion, things are posted from the police department on Nextdoor. So that's one source that we were thinking about using, because we do get information. Colleen has sent me a lot of information from Nextdoor. I mean, in fact, to the point to where it's literally becoming one of my next projects, which developed directly from information gained from Nextdoor. The next one that we talked about was the area command website. If you go directly to foothillsareacommand.com, it will take you right to the Foothills website. It's a little bit bare because for a while there, each area command was responsible for their own website. That has now been a little bit more centralized. So now any content that we want to post, we send it down to IT and they will post it on there. And I don't know if it became because of a website domain issue. I'm not really entirely sure, but we can send them information and they will post it. There's also some standardized information on there talking about like ACS. It's got a horrible picture of me, which I probably should update. There's just lots of, that has really good potential. The problem is that right now the city has two, our PIO and our social media director, there's two of them for 6 area commands. So once we really kick this off, they are going to get hammered with information. I can already feel that. So that might be a little slow developing as far as like any real area command specific information, but I think that's probably another good resource. Social media, Facebook. I do know that the department does do a Twitter account for like breaking news, public safety announcements.
Yeah.
I'm learning that one too. I'm not very good at it. I don't Facebook and I don't tweet. I'm learning that. So you'll have to bear with me, but that generally comes from generally Rebecca Atkins or I think Haley McGuire are the ones that send out information on the department Twitter page. But that's also another means that we can send out information, especially if it's timely, because I know that those come fairly quickly. Obviously neighborhood meetings, COVID, and I've talked about this and complained about it for a year. It's pretty much wrecked that for now. And hopefully once this calms down, if it ever does, we can really start getting kind of back into the neighborhood meetings. The newsletter was another idea that we already do that. Which is distributed. That's also posted on the Foothills website. The one thing that I really liked, and I don't know that if anybody remembers Jill Garcia, but she used to be the crime prevention specialist just prior to Samantha taking over. And Jill was really big on workshops. I mean, she would hold workshops at the Foothills substation because I do have a classroom inside the substation and we could actually do it right there. And it was crime prevention activities. There was quite a bit of information that she could get out into those. And she had a pretty good attendance. In fact, I know that on the followers, when she used to post on the website directly, she probably had close to 2,000 followers just on the Foothills website alone. So that was a really good source of being able to do that. Some of the things that we'd like to post, just general area command information, any upcoming events. So if we have coffees with a cop, Samantha started Paletas with police, which are really cool because those are really good. And then any other types of initiatives that we're doing or any other event, meetings that we're having. Those are some things that we would like to start putting on that website. The hard thing now is we're kind of in this limbo of meeting in person versus meeting over Zoom. So that's kind of remains to be seen at this time. The whole idea behind this, not just because it's a CASA paragraph, but I mean, we really believe, even away from the CASA stuff, we really believe that we want to work together with the residents of the Foothills and the city generally. And I think largely, because I've been up here for about 4 years now, I think the relationships between the police department and the residents in Foothills is pretty positive. But being able to get things to them that they need, actually, I think would help increase that. And it helps with our transparency. I mean, to us, that's important. Some of the barriers that we ran into, that we saw from some of the surveys that were sent out citywide, most people that we found on the surveys were just flat out more interested in the crime numbers. They weren't necessarily too enthusiastic about the outreach with the department. And I've actually heard a couple of times where people have said, well, if you're here at a community meeting, who's out fighting crime? It's a fair question. But I think it's all part of it because we do get at community meetings, we do learn a lot about the neighborhoods that we're meeting in. And it provides us an access to information that we would not otherwise have. So that's kind of my answer is I'm here because I want to hear what issues you're having up here from your perspective, and the officers want to hear this. So that way, maybe there's something that we can go tackle. Let's see. So the ideas on this, we're going to do our best to revamp social media. Like I said, I need to update that horrible picture. Some of the stats on there. Try to post more stuff on that, more events, more things that are relevant to the area command. We recently got using a new database, and we're having it's a little bit touchy as far as talking to our old database. So as far as posting trends, the computer folks are working on that right now to make that. So we expect that to be resolved here fairly quickly. And then one of the other big things, I'm just kind of going through this, and if you all have questions, let me know. But one of the other things that we kind of broke it down into the different hard to reach target groups, or the hard to reaches that we kind of saw. One is the youth. Electronically, they're fairly easy to reach. I mean, every kid has a phone nowadays or a computer, but do they want to read what we're putting out? So how do we tailor that so it becomes interesting to them? The other one is seniors. My father, not interested in Facebook, not interested in Twitter or Instagram, any of that stuff. So how do we get that to them? And then of course with the faith-based organizations. So that was kind of a challenge. We're looking at different ways because a lot of the senior residents are more used to paper kind of media, not necessarily electronic from what I'm told. I mean, there are several that have done really well with electronics, but and then of course we want to use with school personnel to get information. In fact, Samantha and one of my sergeants met with Eisenhower Middle School because we've been having some issues at Mountain Run with some of the students going over there after school and just raising all kinds of ruckus over there. So we met with them so they can get that information out to the parents that APD has contacted the school and this is the situation for them to be aware of it. So that's kind of it in a nutshell. So if anybody has any thoughts, I'm happy to entertain any of it. If there's, I'll stop sharing this screen, maybe.
Commander, this is Idalia. I do have something that could be beneficial, if I may. So we have a program that, well, let me back up. I also volunteer in another board. It's called Meals on Wheels of Albuquerque. I'm actually the vice president for that board. And I love that board because we delivered hot meals to anyone of any age. And we're the only organization that delivers medically tailored meals if you have a special medical condition. What we do, if we partner up with them, at least in this area for Foothills, we can, you know, get in contact with the elderly through, you know, a flyer or you know, something like that, if as an outreach.
Would you happen to have any idea about how many are serviced through?
Yeah, so we divide it up by zip codes, and I can look up the zip codes in the Foothills, and then I can get back with you with that information.
Yeah, let's talk about that because
Okay.
I think that might be something that would be, I like that. I think that might be beneficial. And if we have kind of an idea of what the number would be, then
Yeah.
if we have to print out, you know, if we have to print out the newsletter, for example, then we kind of know how many copies we need to make, you know, just the logistical part of that.
Yeah.
Great idea.
Absolutely. And then, you know, I'm also in the neighborhood association here with Glenwood Hills. So we actually meet tomorrow evening, and it's always at the same time. It's always the second Tuesday of the month at 6:30. I think I don't know if you already have a calendar of all the neighborhood associations and when they meet, and then just kind of reach out to them. That's beneficial. It's worked for me.
Yeah, I know Samantha has done a lot with getting in touch with neighborhood associations and neighborhood watches.
Oh, perfect.
And trying to, because at one point in time we had over 200 neighborhood watches up in the Foothills, and just prior to COVID, that was the number prior to COVID, and then COVID, some of them went away, became inactive. So we're trying to clean up our list right now of the active ones. And then if there's any groups that want to start one, then Samantha can definitely help them with that and point them in the right direction.
Awesome. There's a comment on the chat. It says, for seniors, you might consider distributing the newsletter to senior centers, community centers, and meal sites. This is from Andrew Lipman.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Libman. I'm actually writing that down right now.
Are there any other questions, comments for the commander?
I think partnering is always a good idea. I know a lot of people get their information from like CareQE, TOB, and if you could have that send maybe not everything, but the stuff you are really trying to share out of one of their sites, it's going to reach a vast market.
Yeah,
because they already have a lot of followers.
Yes, absolutely. And that's something, anything with media, we're required to go through our PIO on that, which I completely understand and support. So that's something that we can do. You know, we did attempt, especially up in the Central and Tramway area, and we even made an attempt at Hotel Circle to try to begin some business coalitions. And we found that there wasn't an interest in it. And that was one of the ways that I really thought we could get some information out. We could share things on the, for the commercial properties up in the foothills. I mean, we may take another stab at that. We've tried it a couple times already since I've been up here, and we just have not had really, it just kind of seemed, I guess, apathetic, for lack of a better word. I mean, it was a little disheartening, given the fact that, we do have retail crime issues, that we would like, because I mean, we have a lot of neighborhood associations, and, like Foothills, for example, pretty strong neighborhood association up there. Why can't we do that in the business community too, on a similar model? That was
Right.
kind of where I wanted to go with that, but we had a couple meetings set up, and I think maybe one business showed up. It was kind of sad. So.
Jean has her hand up. Jean?
I was going to say that something that you really found to be important, it might be possible to get it into our HOA newsletter that goes out monthly. I'd have to find the date for submission. I could check into that, and Saturday is our annual meeting, and there'll be a partial new board seated, and I know that there's interest in having you guys come have an event with us after the new board is in place.
And remind me, what neighborhood association?
Town Park.
Town Park.
And of course, you'll always be invited back to National Night Out.
Thank you. I appreciate that. It's very nice there for National Night Out. These are actually some great ideas that, and I think this document has been submitted to the monitoring team, but I don't think there's anything to say that I can't make an addendum to it and add some of these ideas to the actual outline. So yeah, thank you. Josephine, you have your hand up?
Yes, Commander, I was wondering, are these neighborhood associations the ones that are registered with the city? Or, because there's a lot of HOAs, but they're not registered with the city, because I know we didn't get enough membership and we had to give it up with the city, but we do have an HOA.
The HOAs, that's a good question. I know the neighborhood associations are all registered with the ONC. And those are the ones we actually kind of help them to update the list. HOAs might be a little bit different, but I mean, from my perspective, I wouldn't have any problem including HOAs in distribution. If we had an accurate list, a contact number, and a way to get them, say the newsletter, for example, I would not want to exclude them just because they're not registered with the city, and we can still provide them information. I mean,
Yeah, I believe that there's a department in the city, and I have to research it, that has a list of all that. I'll check into it.
okay.
I think Vanessa Baca with ONC, she'll help us with that.
I think so too.
Yeah.
And this is something also, and poor Samantha, she picked up COVID too, so she's homesick. But when she gets back in, she talks with ONC a lot as part of her duties. So that's another thing that she can also look into for the HOAs. Yeah, cool. These are good ideas. Anything? Let's see.
And I think all of us, if we get the newsletter and we can post it ourselves into our next door within our neighborhood, I think that's practical too. So, you could do a screenshot.
Okay. Yeah, and like I said, I'd like to bump up maybe even the website a little bit, and then I'm sure probably somebody in my substation knows how to use Twitter and all that. So,
Yeah,
yeah. But
awesome.
Bob?
Two things, Commander, if I may. One, just to note that our CPC does deliver electronically all of your newsletters to more than 500 unique addresses. I don't know how many you also send it to, but your newsletters go out through us to over 500 locations and individuals. We don't know how many actually, read it. At some place, it could be several. The other thing is, a question came up about reports and filling them out at the police substations. That it used to be that an individual could come into the substation and receive some assistance if necessary to fill out forms and to make a complaint or to file a report. And that went away. Possibly it was because of COVID, but is that going to be coming back, or what's the status of that sort of thing now?
So yeah, I read the email string before the meeting. And so our administrative staff up front, they're not charged, or not charged, try again. They're not trained to do actual reports, like criminal reports, because they haven't been trained in the elements of the crime. They typically will help with accident reports. They'll get whatever documents that they can provide, but a police officer, per our policy, has to take a criminal report. Now, I do know that they're looking at starting, if they haven't already, our telephone report unit is now being trained to take, or can take, reports where there is suspect information. And what they'll do with that is they will sift through these reports, and let's say someone goes to calls TRU and says something happened in the Foothills. TRU will take that report and they will send it to the day shift lieutenant, who then will assign it to either, depending on what it is, assign it to either a field officer, or will send it back to the impact team or detectives. And one note on that, I just recently got the East Side impact team back under my command. For a while there, they were in the centralized investigative division. And now they have put them back out into the field services. So my impact team actually covers Foothills and Southeast Area Command. And I'm working on getting them a couple of more detectives to kind of spread the workload. But that's where those reports will end up. And TRU is telephone report unit. So I know that they're working on doing that. I will get it back to you to make sure that when they're going to start it, or if they have started it. I know we spoke about it in a commander meeting a couple of weeks ago, about the telephone report unit doing that. And the other question came up, what is impact? Impact is an area command detective unit. Previously, we used to have 6 of them, 6 area command detectives, and they would take pretty much anything that violent crimes wouldn't take. So we're talking burglaries, they'll take aggravated assaults, they'll take domestic violence with firearms involved. If there's anything above that, then generally the gun violence reduction unit will take anything that a firearm causes an injury. GVRU, gun violence reduction, will take that. And then obviously there's the homicide and sex crimes and robbery that will take those other crimes. As far as having somebody sitting in the substation, that's probably not realistic at this point in time. And my administrative staff will have you call 242 cops from the substation. So if you need to file a criminal report, it's best to just stay at home and call, unless I can see if TRU has started this practice yet. I know that was discussed, but if accident reports, general documents, the substation's good for criminal reports. Because strangely enough, there's really no police officers at the substation. Because if they were at the substation, they're not out in the area command doing what they should be doing. So we generally don't let them hang out at the subs, and they really don't want to. They want to go out and do work. So you probably won't find a lot of cops at the substation, oddly enough. So let's see. I think Josephine's hand was still up from the last one. Does anybody else have anything on that?
I think Graham had a question. Graham, I saw you raise your hand.
I was just going to say that I send out the APD report every month, along with our newsletter to all our HOA, which is not very big, but it's 500. I'm joking. 50 homes.
50 homes.
Yeah.
Oh, good. And I think we can increase that, especially with what we have on the outline, and then with some of the great ideas that you all gave me, and that I'll probably steal and throw into there, if you don't mind. But it's really about information sharing, and it's two ways. It's really critical that stays the practice, because we can't do our jobs without the citizens helping us. I mean, we have to get information because we can't be everywhere, unfortunately. But I appreciate everything on this. Does anybody have anything else on this?
I think Bob has his hand up.
Oh, yes.
Heard a rumor
Uh-oh.
that there were no guns stolen this month. Is that accurate?
Yes. So that, my recollection's correct. Since we've been doing Zoom, that's 2 months.
Yeah.
So yes. Yeah, I'm really happy about that. We just unfortunately at the beginning of this, and we all remember that we were losing a lot of guns to burglaries.
Yeah.
And that is just never a good thing. So the word's getting out. I tell everybody I see, I hope you all are doing the same thing, but that is the one most critical part of all this is if you have them, protect them. So yeah, thank you.
Awesome. Thank you, Commander
You're welcome.
Collins, for all your awesome wisdom every month. Does anybody have any questions? We have 5 minutes left, and I want to respect people's time. Any other questions, comments, concerns, complaints? No complaints. No, I'm kidding.
Good job.
Thank you.
I do have a question.
Yes, Jean?
So my street, not even just my neighborhood, my street got hit with one of the car thefts. They left a stolen car in its place. Is that normal?
Unfortunately, yes. We think sometimes we used to think that cars were stolen, to be taken south or even chop shop, and some still are. Largely the phenomenon that we've seen is that people will steal cars as a daily driver, and they will go run errands, whatever those errands may be, and then once they're done, they dump it, and then they'll go steal another one. We see that quite often. Yes, it's really bizarre. My brain doesn't work that way, but they will steal them for a daily driver. It's strange, but it does happen quite frequently, actually.
But on that question, does the built-in electronics that you have to have a key fob to turn the ignition on, does that help at all?
I think it does. I know that, you know, with even my personal truck, if I get out of my truck starts screaming at me that the key fob isn't in there. So I think it does, but you know, some of these car thieves they're really good at what they do. I mean, not that I'm paying them any respect, but they are skilled in what they do, and a lot of them have the ability to circumvent these systems somehow. It's beyond my technological ability, but I know that they can do that. We have found,
Be careful.
yeah, just be careful. We also have found that it's interesting that in a lot of cases, mostly from what I've seen, and I can't say this is a trend, but just from what I've seen, that a lot of automatic transmissions type vehicles get stolen because they were never taught how to drive a stick shift. I've actually seen that on several occasions. So
Both my cars that I have are stick shift.
then you might be okay.
I might be okay.
Yeah, they don't know how to work a clutch.
Sign of the times.
It is.
Awesome. Okay, well, with that, we have 1 minute left and I want to be respectful of time. Just real quick reminder, our next meeting is March 14, same time, same channel. With that, if there are no other objections, I will I'll take a motion to adjourn the meeting. Thank you, Bob. Second.
Second.
Thank you, Byron. Okay, well, thank you all so much. Happy Valentine's, and we'll see you next month.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Hi, Delia.
Bye-bye.
An excellent meeting.
Thank you. Thank
It
you,
was
Bob.
an excellent meeting, yes.
Thank you, Kelly. Thank you so much.
Great job.
Thank you, David.
Oh, it's working now. My audio's working.
Oh, now it's working.
At the end
Okay,
of the meeting, and I had 14 brilliant questions for Collins.
too late.
Darn it.
Too
Hey,
late.
you did. Hey,
Okay.
listen, you did a great job. Great job.
Thank you, David. I'll call you.
Hey,
I'll
and
call you
and
this
Bob,
week.
if you're there, you did an excellent job over the years, buddy. He's already
Bye.
gone. All right, see you
Yeah,
guys.
he's good.
All right,
Bye.
I don't blame him. All right, bye.